that doesn't make us any morally superior to any of these other people coming from these other groups. I really wanted to make that point very strongly. And I also wanted people to consider, we live in a Muslim majority nation. We have Christians and Hindus and Parsis and Sikh people and all sorts of people. But there's an everyday sort of bias against them. There's a condescension and a superiority that I dislike very much. And we treat them in such offhandedly condescending ways. We have stereotypes about Christians. Oh, you know, they're not so good in their hygiene. Please forgive me if anybody's Christian here. I'm going to be really honest about this. They're not honest. They're like this, they're like that. And I want us to say, is this fair? Is this fair of us to have these assumptions? And as far as, you know, I'd actually forgotten that I wrote that little part about Lela offering water to the other people that are working in the rich household, and somebody says, I don't want to drink water from her. I swear I wrote that 4 years ago. But it just goes to show you that these things have been happening for a long time. A long time. It's not just today, it's not just with Salman Taseer's death. This is part of our everyday society, and I just wanted us to see it from her point of view. What does it feel like when somebody says to you, I don't want to take water from you, you're dirty, you're not clean, you're not of the chosen religion. So I just, you know, this might get me in, I'm not going to say it's going to get me in trouble. It's honest, it's true. So I wanted to put it out there. Don't applaud me, it's not really.
And just sticking with this issue of religion, you show that the two main religions you look at, Christianity and Islam, share a lot in common, but there's also the differences. And so, you know, there's the doctrinal differences, like Muslims thinking Ishmael is sacrificed by Ibrahim, whereas Christians think it's Isaac. And the differences, obviously, in approach to Jesus or Isa. Yeah. But you also show a lot of similarities, both good and bad, and a lot of the prejudices that both religious groups have are in mirror with each other. So could you just say a bit more about what you were thinking when you were writing this discussion of sort of fundamentalisms and extremisms in both religions? And as well as tolerance and interchange?
Well, I wrote this story. I couldn't have written this story if I hadn't been a student in the United States and been a minority myself. And, you know, gone over there and realized that there were people who didn't know anything about what I believe and what I practice and what I worship. They didn't understand why I wouldn't eat pork or why I wouldn't drink alcohol. They wouldn't know the first thing about the Quran or about the Prophet, peace be upon him, or anything. And when you are in a majority, you have such a security, you know, you're surrounded by your own. You go abroad and you're not in that majority anymore, and you lose that security. And for me, that is the flip side is exactly what a Christian person feels like in our society. So I had that perspective, so I could write from that perspective. And you know, that experience obviously makes you understand, oh boy, you know, nothing is as secure and sure as I thought it was. So that's where that comes from. And, you know, it's easy to sort of beat the drum of tolerance and compassion and we should get along and we should understand each other. We don't. We don't. And again, as a writer, my job is not to say what things should be, it is to say what they are. And that's what it is. It is full of misunderstanding and intolerance, hatred, death, killing, what have you. This is what it is.
So, do you have well, you know, we talked on Skype about two features that I noticed very much in the writing, and one is the gaze and eyes. Visual images come up a lot in this novel. Particularly about men gazing at women, and you talk about the face veil as a kind of blinkering of the vision as well. So your attention seems always to be on the eyes and the visual. So could you say something about why this interest?
I like eyes. They're pretty. They're the windows to the soul. No, I don't know. I mean, that just seems to be the first thing that comes to my mind. I think it's the point of connection between two people. So when you take that away, as when you cover the entire face in a burqa, to me, you've lessened a connection. You've taken away the chance for an interaction. In our society, some people feel even that is haram, but it's not, obviously, as when you pray and when you are in Umrah or on Hajj, your face is unveiled. That allows for connection. I think that allows for humanity. So I think to me the eyes symbolize the point of connection between people and their environments, obviously.
And the other image that came up quite a bit was ghosts and the poor, the disabled as ghosts, sort of spectres haunting the city that people just don't notice. Was that something you were consciously deciding to do, or it just came out?
No, it just happened. Honestly, 50% of what I write is very unconscious. It just comes out, and then, I look at it later. I look at books that I've written or stories that I've written years after I've written them, and I go, that wasn't me. Did I even write that? Who is this person that wrote this thing? Where did it even come from? Thanks. So, it's very unconscious. These are images, I guess, that are just fixed in my mind or playing around in my head. It's a mysterious thing, creativity, and how it comes out in paper.
Which is why fiction so often addresses these issues we're sometimes accused of addressing after the event, much before they actually happen. It's more premonition or prescience than comment on real political events or happenings.
Right.
And what do you, since we're sort of talking about how the books are interpreted and maybe you didn't intend them that way, then how do you both feel about this new category that people are paying so much attention to what they're calling the new Pakistani writing in English, and this Granta that's come out, and the anthologies that are starting to make quite a splash at the moment. But obviously you've both been writing a long time, so what do you feel about this media attention?
Oh, we never wrote before Granta came along. We just started writing. No, I'm kidding. Of course we were writing before Granta and before everybody. Oh, Pakistan is so cool. It's so sexy. We got to write about this place, but only if you talk about terrorism. We don't want to hear about your other things. We don't want to hear about, It's very funny. I love this. Every media report that has come out in the last 2 years or even 5 years. Oh, there was a fashion show in Pakistan. That'll show the Taliban. There was a concert. That's flying in the face of terrorism. Okay, if I wash my hair, is that flying in the face of terrorism? All the ordinary things that we do in life. And, we lived our lives a long time before 9/11 ever happened. And we lived our lives a long time, and we were writing about our lives a long time before anybody ever took notice of us, and hopefully we will keep writing after people stop noticing us, and I hope that happens sooner rather than later. I'm very bored with all the attention.
I think Bina said it all. Some of us, Sarah Soleri, for example, yesterday was saying, when she was called an American Pakistani writer, she said, no, I'm not, I'm a Pakistani writer. Some of us have been Pakistani writers for longer than the term has been fashionable, so that's all I can say about it. When it was really unfashionable and quite obscure, in fact, it was a minus point rather than a plus. Oh, they come from some obscure place, who knows what they write about, camels, deserts.
Don't forget the peach trees, the exotic mangoes, and the pomegranates.
Oh yeah, somebody said, oh, do Pakistanis write about saris and bindis? Now, what do saris and bindis really have to do with modern-day Pakistan? Nobody writes about them, for God's sake. But
I should have worn a sari and a bindi to this book launch, actually, just to annoy you.
But suddenly, of course, the last 3 years, or 4 perhaps, we're supposed all to be writing about journalistic issues, topical issues, not a kind of deep underlying malaise or, if you like, even celebrating other aspects of it. I think that are much more a part of us as writers.
Can I ask you a question from a position of ignorance? Leila works for this family, is it in defence area? Yeah, in defence. And the daughter is, becomes increasingly pious and wearing a hijab and going to prayer meetings, and she seems to be involved in sort of dawah or, proselytizing
She
work.
wants to convert Layla, basically.
Yeah, she wants to convert Layla and invite her to Islam, and her attitudes are in some ways quite fixed. For example, when the earthquake in Kashmir happens, then she sort of sees it as God's punishment for the Kashmiris' Sufism. So what group was that based on, and what were you, is there any particular, did you research this sort of movement, or was this a sort of hybridization of lots of different things?
I mean, we've all been to the darses, right? The drawing room darses, as I like to say. The guys in the audience have not, but the ladies have. And I've been to a few of those, and I just found them absurd, comic even. And so that's what I was trying to get across. I mean, do you really need to ask questions about whether wearing a type of perfume is okay if you're sitting in a group of men? Can I wear perfume if there are men? I mean, do we really need to ask these? Are these the important things that we need to know? And if somebody came to me and said, convert to my religion, but you can't wear perfume in front of other, I'd just be like, what kind of religion is this?
You're not about
you're not
hair
talking
removal,
to me. You're not talking to me about the things that I want to hear about Islam, which is, you know, that it's progressive, that it has your interests in mind, that God cares about you, that, oops, somebody doesn't want me to, okay, it's working. So, you know, it's, sorry, God, sorry.
Your voice will carry anyway.
Okay, so, I mean, it's just looking at the comic. Okay, Islam has a comic side, and this is it, whether or not you believe me, but it's true. There are things that are very funny about the way Islam is played out in our country. It's not all, you know, assassinations and horrible murders. It's just sometimes stupidity. Not that Islam is stupid, do not misquote me, but the way in which we act out our everyday Islam can be fairly ridiculous.
You're talking about the difference between Muslims and Islam.
Yes, of course.
Some Muslims.
Islam is not flawed, in my opinion, but Muslims are terribly, terribly flawed and comic and silly and all the rest of it. So I wanted to put a bit of lightheartedness in as well, and just say that, you know, just listen to yourself once in a while. Would you want to follow this religion?
And you show the sort of intergenerational differences because this girl's mother is collecting clothes and giving charity to the earthquake victims. So you're not saying that every Muslim is the same in any way. There's very different ways of living.
There's a different Islam of, there's an Islam of generations, I've found. My parents' generation sees Islam one way. My parents' parents saw it one way. I see it one way. My children will see it a different way. The young people of today see it a different way. It's like a kaleidoscope, really, and you shake it, and every time a different configuration comes up. You keep shaking it and keep shaking it, and I think this is what the Western media and the Western writers have a problem with. They keep shaking the kaleidoscope. They keep seeing so many different pictures, they don't know what to make of it. For us, we accept all the pictures. It's natural for all of us. We grow up with everything. So it's easier and more difficult in a way, but that's what it is.
And that question of audience and West and the subcontinent, I mean, Ame, you have a British publisher that also publishes in the Middle East, right? And your publisher at the moment is in India. Do you think you have more mediations to do, Ame, as compared with Bina? Do you feel that you're writing more for a subcontinental audience, and does that affect your writing, each of you?
I don't know who I write for. I write for whoever picks up the book. I don't care where you're from. I don't care if you're American or English or South American or whatever. You're going to like the book. That's all I care about.
I think that if you're interested in being offbeat or not writing what everyone else around you is writing, or writing to order, then you're going to have difficulties publishing anywhere and everywhere, whether it's the place you live in or whether it's abroad. In fact, ironically, sometimes a completely different culture, in both our cases, Italy, has shown interest in our work for very different reasons, perhaps because they're less jaded.
I think I just want to add that I'm not going to write to order. I'm not going to write something that somebody wants to hear just because it's going to sell well, or it's going to get me a deal, or it's going to get me. I've never been like that. That's not my philosophy, and if I don't get published, I don't care, really. Honestly, you can quote me on that one.
Well, thank you both very much. I think we've got time for a few questions. Can I ask you to keep them quite brief and make them questions, not statements? Yes?
Just wanted a clarification. What do you mean when you say we have accepted
Well, we live with them. We may not adopt them for ourselves, but we live with all the different faces. We live with Sufism. We live with extremism. We do. We live with it. We live with tolerance. We live with agnostics, atheists, people who are culturally Muslim but not practicing. We live with all of this. We know that we don't look for only one Islam, a sort of a mono. We as in Pakistanis, I would say. Well, you can if you want to. But are you going to find it? Do we? I don't mind many different interpretations and facets and.
The problem is that we're trying to sort of suck that multiplicity or whatever we find into one package, which is, and I'm not saying this is a desirable thing, but I think this is the source of the problem where I guess I disagree with you, I just realized.
That's okay.
Yeah, where I feel like we haven't accepted it.
Okay, if we're fighting about it, that's also part of it. But Islam is also going to be fought about, as it has been fought about for centuries since its beginning. That's also part of Islam. And it's not great to kill each other, but it's okay to disagree and talk about interpretation and talk about what's important to you, what's important to me. Do you want to go to a shrine? I don't want to go to a shrine. That's okay. It's all right to have these arguments, as long as you're not picking up a gun for it, in my opinion.
Anybody else?
Are you all too sleepy? Thank you for coming out on your Saturday afternoon, by the way, on your holiday. There's a question in the back.